All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to chapter 18, section 5. This is challenges to church authority. This here is an example of Martin Luther when he's posting his complaints against the Catholic Church on a church door. And this won't be until roughly the 1500s. But anyways, as you remember at the end of last section, we started talking a little bit about how the church is losing some of its power throughout Europe. One, because of the Black Death. A lot of priests died during the Black Death. And then some of their practices to try to ward off the Black Plague, the Black Death, did not work very well. And so a lot of the people of Europe were kind of looking at the church saying, you know, you've been no help to us. And they start coming up with new ideas and they start leaving the Christian church. Well, what happens is the Catholic Church in Europe, they want to kind of stifle the dissent, maybe stop the people that are talking out about the church. And so what they start doing is they start going around trying to find these people that are speaking out against the church. And these people are known as heretics. Now, heresy means that somebody is holding religious ideas or talking about religion in a way that goes against the accepted practices of the church. What happened to some of these heretics throughout Europe is they're going to be tortured, maybe put into prison, and even killed. And unfortunately, many of them were innocent. I don't know if you've studied too much about like the Salem witch trials that happened in the 1600s in Massachusetts. That's what was happening in Europe at this time, you know, in the early to mid 1000s. All right, so you have Pope Innocent III. Okay, Pope Innocent III in the early 1200s. He is wanting, you know, to get a lot of these heretics out of southern France. So he basically starts a war in France. The war is going to destroy towns, kill thousands. Okay, and this is around the 1200s. And this heresy, it's what it is it's like questioning the power of the Pope. And of course, as you can see a quote here on this image, "Kill them all. God will know his own," allegedly said by some papal representative, a pope's representative, when asking the Crusaders how to distinguish the heretics from true Christians. Basically, he is saying, it doesn't matter, kill everyone. God will decide who was the heretic or not. It was a very, very brutal thing, and this is coming from the Pope, and this is in the 1200s, just killing randomly everybody that, you know, they suspected was talking out against the church. Another thing that's going on at this time is in 1002, the government of the Muslim Moors over here in Spain, so this orange, is going to start to fall. Okay, their reign is falling apart. Now, the Muslims have controlled this area for a good, let's say, 500 years, 200 plus 300, 400 years as they were spreading their empire. Well, what's going to happen is their empire is going to start to fall. And this is going to leave an opening for the Christians to come in and start taking over land again, for the Spain to like reconquer their land, the Spanish people. And these are Christians in Spain that are going to come in here and try and take over what the Muslims had held on to for a good couple hundred years. This again is going to be a conflict, a religious conflict. That's why it's in this section. Okay? The Reconquista is what this is known as. The Reconquista of, you see where the purple and the yellow meet each other, and this is in 1000. Then you can see here 100 years later how much more of Spain has been taken over by the Christians, and then down here to 1300, just a little bit left that the Muslims have. Now the Reconquista is this attempt of these Christian kingdoms, the purple, the Christian kingdoms, to retake Spain from the Muslim Moors. And this lasted for good 300 years. Good 300 years that this reconquering took place, that it took that long to reconquer some of that area. But by the late 1400s, it is successful. You will see that slow creep. The Christians will take over Spain and Portugal by the 1500s. All right. There you have these two influential people that are there on that peninsula. You have Isabella and Ferdinand. And now the marriage of these two people will unite a couple of kingdoms within Spain, Aragon and Castile. Now, as you can see, Aragon is right here, right? And Castile is right up here on the top half part of Spain. Well, those two are going to unite all of Spain under their control. They will lead the battle against the Muslims. Eventually, they will defeat the Muslims. The last place that the Muslims hold in Spain is Granada. And eventually, in 1492, roughly January of 1492, Granada will fall. The Christians will capture Granada, and now the Muslims are totally kicked off of the European continent. The Muslims are out of Spain. And it leads to, later that year, something very influential for us here in America. It leads to the voyage of Christopher Columbus heading west. Up to this time, Columbus had come to Ferdinand and Isabella probably 2 or 3 times, asking for them to fund his trip across to the west. And they had said no because they were fighting the Muslims at that time, and they couldn't spend the money on some what they thought was foolish trip west across the Atlantic Ocean. But by the end of 1492, they were able to do this because they no longer needed this money to fight off the Muslims. So a little bit of American history involved in there also with this defeat of the Muslim Moors in Granada. All right. The main goal of Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, once they captured all of Spain and conquered the Muslims, was to convert all of the Spaniards to Christians, to Catholicism. They are going to require all of the Jews to convert to Christianity, and they outlaw the practice of Islam. Right? So that's one of the big things for Ferdinand and Isabella, is to make sure that every Spaniard is Christian. No other religion could be practiced, converting and outlawing other religions. To do this, though, the Spanish Inquisition will come into effect. Now, the main purpose of the Spanish Inquisition was to punish and kill heretics and non-Christians in Spain. So what happens is that priests are going to be put in charge of this trial. And that's what an inquisition, it's like a trial. And so some priests are put in charge of this trial by Ferdinand and Isabella. And the priest's job is to try to figure out who is speaking out against the religion unlawfully and who is not. Well, what ends up happening is a lot of torture is going to be used to determine who actually is a heretic and who is not. And a lot of, again, killings are going to happen, tortures are going to happen, imprisonments are going to happen. So you can see almost 2,000 are killed in Spain alone. And what happens is, to stop somebody from being tortured, they almost have to give up someone else as a heretic. And they could have lied just to stop the torture. And it ends up becoming this never-ending process of accusing someone else of being a heretic just so I don't get punished. It's really, really a horrible situation, and that's what goes on during the Spanish Inquisition. And the Spanish Inquisition, it lasts for about 100 years or more. It's not a quick thing. Quite honestly, it doesn't really go away until the 1800s. It's certainly not being practiced too much, but for over 100 some years, there's this fear, and that's what's happening here in Spain, is the fear of being accused of being a heretic, and then you're going to be tortured. It's really a horrible situation. All right. Last but not least, we have the Jews and how they were being treated throughout Europe. And that's why Jews were being converted to Christianity. If they would not convert, they would be tortured or killed. And one of the main reasons is that because they're being blamed for the death of Jesus Christ. Throughout the Middle Ages, they're going to be discriminated against. They're going to be the ones that are blamed for the Black Death. They're going to be blamed for anything that goes wrong. The Jews will be blamed because they are seen as the ones of killing Jesus, and that if anything is going bad, it is God's revenge because the Jews had killed Jesus. At least that's the viewpoint of that time period. Still, many of those ideas today kind of prolonged throughout the world. A lot of it goes back to the treatment of Jesus right around the turn of the BC to AD, that the Jews are the ones that killed Jesus, and that's why they're being discriminated against. Okay, that's the end of chapter 18. This is 18:5. So make sure you understand who the heretics are, the Reconquista, the Spanish Inquisition, Ferdinand and Isabella, the fight to get the Muslims out of Spain and how Jews were treated throughout Europe. But a lot of this is to try to get the church church's power back after the Black Death and other time periods and things like that also. So what's going to happen in our next chapter is we're actually going to take a look at more challenges to the church and really a split within the church that's going to occur. But this really ends our Middle Ages unit. So the next unit is going to be talking about the Renaissance and how a rebirth is going to happen in Europe, and it leads to the age of exploration and other good things that will happen throughout the world. Always bad things and good things going on at the same time. All right, so make sure you do your quiz for this. See you soon. Thank you.